Welcome. First of all, welcome. This is Unsolicited Perspectives. I'm your host, Bruce Anthony, here to lead the conversation in important events and topics that are shaping today's society. Join the conversation and follow us wherever you get your audio podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch our video podcast. Rate, review, like, comment, share. Share with your friends, share with your family, hell, even share with your enemies. On today's episode, I'll be talking about a variety of different things. First thing, Hulk Hogan. The next thing, the Republican Party from Lincoln to Trump. And then I'm going to be ending off today's episode talking about one of my shames, my vanity. But that's enough of the intro. Let's get to the show. You know, I've often talked about on this show how much of a fan I am of professional wrestling. How I owned a little small wrestling company here in the DC area called Zero Underground Wrestling with two other partners that no longer exist. But for a little while, we was doing all right. And I still got the championship belt. I grew up watching professional wrestling. I still watch it to this day. Me and my bestie will get together. We got together at WrestleMania and watched the first night of WrestleMania together. We will often text each other back and forth about what's going on, or maybe it's just me texting her. But nevertheless, I am a fan of professional wrestling, and I have been ever since I was a kid. And as far back as I can remember, my earliest memories was being a little Hulkamaniac when his first feud was against Mr. Wonderful Paul Orndorff. So it had to be after WrestleMania 2. That's the earliest memories that I had. And man, let me tell you, I was a little Hulkamaniac. I was running wild, saying prayers, eating my vitamins, doing Hulk Hogan poses when my mom was trying to take pictures for school or special occasions. Didn't matter. I was going to do a Hulk Hogan pose. I still, every now and then, do a Hulk Hogan pose when I'm at the gym. And I was a huge, huge fan. Something happened around my teen years, preteens to teenage years, that whole stick that Hulk Hogan was doing got kind of tired, got kind of lame. He turned into a bad guy, and I still didn't really like him that much anymore. And pretty much I was done being a little Hulkamaniac. Every now and then he would come out with his nostalgia act that reminded me of when I was a little kid with the yellow tights and saying brother and all that other stuff. But I was a fan. One thing about technology and just our ability to have access to celebrities or people that are on television, music, media, or anything like that is that we actually get to know little characteristics about people that, say, in the 60s, 70s, and before then, we would not have known, right? Like, I don't know if anybody really knows anything personal about Humphrey Bogart, right? Like, how much personal stuff do we know about Marlon Brando? We know now more stuff because some stuff has come to light. But during the 70s, 60s and 70s, when he was really popular, we didn't know that much about them. We didn't know that much about our authors or our musicians. We didn't know James Brown was a woman beater. We didn't know that he did drugs until it was the 80s and he was doing drugs, right? Things weren't as prevalent like, say, Whitney Houston and Bobby Brown. Like, they were popular in the 90s and the 2000s, and when they had the TV show, we all knew that they was doing a little bit of drugs, but these things weren't prevalent back in the day like they are now. And I'm learning more and more about Hulk Hogan that it's tarnishing my childhood. And, I'm not a fan of him as a person anymore. I don't go back and watch any of his old matches. And some of you out there who don't really pay attention to Hulk Hogan might not understand where all of this is coming from. Don't worry, I'm going to explain. So let's start with 2015, where there was a racial slur scandal. Yeah, Hulk Hogan said the N-word. There was a leaked sex tape. That's right, Hulk Hogan was in the sex tape. I'll get to that in a minute. There was a leaked sex tape that revealed that Hulk Hogan had made a racially charged comment, including the use of the use of the N-word. There were other stuff that he said, but the most important thing is he said the N-word. This led to his immediate firing from the WWE and the removal of his profile from their website. So they recognized that we needed to move away from him. The WWE is the World Wrestling Entertainment. Y'all might remember them as World Wrestling Federation or the WWF. They recognized that they needed to move away from him because he got caught saying the N-word on a leaked sex tape. Not a good look for a publicly traded company. In the recording, Hogan was heard making the racially charged comments, but these comments were about his daughter Brooke's relationship with a black man. He later explained that he was in a very dark place at the time, feeling completely broken and destroyed and even suicidal. Hogan also mentioned that he grew up in an environment where such language was commonly used, but he acknowledged that he was wrong and expressed deep regrets for his words. Yeah, anytime I'm feeling suicidal, I just say the N word or I say something derogatory about a group of people. That's just what I do when I'm feeling sad and depressed. I just say derogatory things. That makes absolutely no freaking sense. It's a stupid argument. But okay, he goes on this apology tour, and the WWE, what do? They let him return after he did his apology tour, January 2018. So he was basically barred for little over 2 years, right? You may say 3 years, but it was a little over 2 years. They reinstated him and even put him back into the Hall of Fame. This was once again when he went on his apology tour. Okay, that's bad, right? Like that's a reason for me as a black man to be like, I don't really rock with Hulk Hogan anymore. He's just out here using that word. He's using it and then saying the reason why he used it is because he was in a depressive mood and suicidal, and that he grew up with people just using it. Now he is from Florida. Hulk Hogan is a lot older than what people may think and know. And I'm sure that that type of language is often used in that time period. But here's the thing: Hulk Hogan has traveled the world. He's worked with black people. He knows that that word is not good for him to say. So the excuse that he's using is, hey, you know what? I'm in a dark place. Hey, you know what? That's just the way people from my time period talk. Hey, a lot of men from my time period say a lot of things that I don't say anymore because I grew up and evolved. But okay. He was involved in a Gawker lawsuit. What was that? This was about the sex tape. So he was involved in a high profile legal battle against Gawker Media after they published his secretly recorded sex tapes featuring, of course, him. Now, I'm not knocking him for having sex tapes. I don't shame anybody in their kink. It was a sex tape release that led to everybody hearing him using the derogatory terms and the N word. Because of that, he sued with the help of, some other people because they were after Gawker anyway, and won $140 million in damages and led to Gawker's bankruptcy. So let's see. He says the N word. He was barred from the WWE for almost 3 years, stripped from his Hall of Fame. After he went on his apology tour saying that he was sorry that he used the N word because he was in a suicidal mind state, and that's where people from his area or his walk of life said those type of things. He was let back in, sued, and got $140 million. Talk about falling up. Woo! All right. It doesn't end there. These are not solely, well, him saying the N-word, I was done with him then. But I'm really, really done with him now because of his recent actions. If you didn't watch the Republican National Convention, he was a speaker at the Republican National Convention. Now, do I dislike him because he was a speaker at the Republican National Convention? No. Rock was a presenter or speaker at the Republican National Convention. I think it was in 2000 or 2004. I don't dislike certain Republicans. Like that's obviously absurd. I have some friends that are Republican. We fundamentally disagree on what the proper way to have a great country. Like we fundamentally agree. I'm not talking about those Trumpers. I'm talking about those other type of Republicans. And I'll get into that in the next segment, but we're focusing on Hulk Hogan right now. I don't have a problem with him speaking at the RNC. I have a problem with his attacks against Kamala Harris. Now, TMZ reported that at the Thirsty Cowboy Bar in Medina, Ohio, while promoting his new beer, Hulk Hogan was interacting with the crowd on stage. Then he suddenly spinned off into a political rant attacking Kamala Harris. Now, he did speak at the RNC. He said Trump was his hero. Okay. if Trump's your hero, I really got to question who you are as a person, because that's not somebody that you really should look up to. But okay, so he's attacking Kamala Harris. What did he say? What did he say that makes me just be like, I'm off this dude forever? First thing he said, do you want me to body slam Kamala Harris? Do you want me to body slam Kamala Harris? And notice what I'm doing. I know her name is Kamala. He said Kamala. Notice that a lot of people that are being derogatory to Kamala Harris are not saying her name properly. Kamala was a Ugandan giant. He was a wrestler, not Kamala. Kamala. That's her name. He also says, you want me to drop a leg on Kamala? Once again, you can look this up. TMZ released it. Kamala, not Kamala. Because Kamala is her actual name, not Kamala. Okay. Is Kamala a chameleon? Is she Indian? And then makes that offensive Indian cry sound. This is all on stage while he's promoting his beer. It's one thing to say, I don't rock with this president. I don't rock with Donald J. Trump. We'll never rock with him. I'm not going to sit. Well, yeah, I guess I have disparaged him, not by saying like he's not white. Like I don't really care if he's white or not. I haven't attacked him for being a white male. I've attacked him for being a toxic white male. that's the reason why I attack him for being a toxic male. I attack him for being a bigot. I attack him for being a racist. Right? If Hulk Hogan is attacking Kamala Harris for her policies, okay, cool. But to threaten physical harm, never mind the fact that you're a man and she's a woman, and I just don't believe in that, right? I don't believe that men should hit women unless, it's like Ronda Rousey, unless it's one of them female fighters that can really whoop your ass. You can defend yourself. But I don't believe in men harming women physically. I just don't, right? So he's talking about physically harming her. Then he's disparaging her nationality. And then he further does that by making what is a Native American offensive war cry, which is something that Kamala Harris is not. She is Indian. Her mother is actually from India. Different people. So he's offensive all across the board. As he's doing this rant, he goes on and he says, I'm going to get heat for that one, brother. Heat is a wrestling term where people start booing you, right? Where you're getting, what's the easy way to say it? When you're getting heat, when you're getting people riled up and you're getting people to dislike you. So he says, I'm going to get heat for that one, brother. That's not me. That was the beer talking. This is what he said to the crowd. So when he said the N-word, he was suicidal. And that's the way his people talked when he was growing up, that wasn't really him. When he's attacking Kamala Harris, it's the beer. That's not really him. Now, you are who you are. Those things right there pissed me off. But it goes even further, and it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or Republican. If you're just a decent human being, this next thing that Hulk Hogan did, or Terry Bollea as his real name did, should sicken everybody across the board. So Hulk Hogan was on Logan Paul's podcast, Impulsive. That's the name of Logan Paul's podcast. And this is what he said on Logan Paul's podcast. This is after all these recent controversies, even the controversial attack were threatening bodily harm on Kamala Harris, our current vice president, and the Democratic nominee for president for this 2024 election. He goes on Logan Paul's podcast, and this is what he says. He says, wrestling fans are very forgiving. If Chris Benoit can do the SHIT he did, and the fans still love him, they are very forgiving. I made some major mistakes in my personal life. They are very forgiving. They'll forgive you. I mean, aside from the things that he did, if you don't know who Chris Benoit is, what he says is kind of like, okay, that I don't Bruce, I don't understand why is that a big deal? He's just saying that wrestling fans have forgiven Chris Benoit. And that if wrestling fans have forgiven Chris Benoit, then they can forgive Hulk Hogan for his transgressions. Some of you people out there that are listening to this podcast are not wrestling fans. You don't know who Chris Benoit is. Don't worry, I got you covered. I'm going to tell you who Chris Benoit is. Chris Benoit was a professional wrestler from Canada that wrestled in all the major wrestling promotions throughout the world. Was one of my favorite wrestlers over from June 22nd to June 24 in 2007. Over a 3-day period, Chris Benoit, one of the people I used to absolutely love as a professional wrestler, murdered his wife, Nancy. Okay? That's bad in and of itself. When you murder your wife, when you murder anybody, that's bad. So once again, Hulk Hogan is comparing himself to Chris Benoit, saying that if wrestling fans can forgive Chris Benoit, they can forgive him. Chris Benoit murdered his wife. But that's not all, because I said it was over a 3-day period, right? Not only did he murder his wife, Nancy, he then murdered his 7-year-old son, Daniel, before he committed suicide. So let's go over the timeline of what Chris Benoit did, because I know this might be a little shock to you guys. Maybe you heard the story, maybe you didn't hear the story. June 22nd, 2007, Benoit killed his wife, Nancy, in their home of Fayetteville, Georgia. Her limbs were bound and she was strangled with the cord. Her body was then found wrapped in a blanket with the Bible placed beside her. The following day, Chris Benoit sedated his son Daniel with Xanax and then suffocated him. Daniel was found in his bed with a Bible placed beside him as well. And on June 24th, 2007, Benoit hanged himself with a weight machine in his home. No suicide note was found. Hulk Hogan said that if wrestling fans can forgive Chris Benoit, they'll forgive him. Wrestling fans, like myself, have never forgiven Chris Benoit. Will never forgive Chris Benoit. His son Daniel was a 7-year-old autistic boy. There are videos of Daniel out there. I know I'm supposed to be a Christian, forgiveness and grace and all that type of stuff. We've never forgiven him. I've never sat down and watched a Chris Benoit match since then. I've completely just blocked him out of my life and turned my back on anything that had to do with Chris Benoit, right? Much like my sister has done to P. Diddy, I did to Chris Benoit, and I'm now doing that to Hulk Hogan. He repeatedly puts his foot in his mouth by saying some of the dumbest ish I've ever heard in my entire life, and he ruined my childhood. Don't look deeply into those people that you admired growing up. You're going to find something that's going to just turn your stomach, turn you off, and end your childhood, much like Hulk Hogan has ended mine. So, to Hulk Hogan, not only do I not forgive you for saying the N-word, not only do I not forgive you for the attacks of bodily harm on Kamala Harris, but I also don't forgive you by making that dumb comparison between you and Chris Benoit. To me, y'all are both evil people. So, in the same vein of talking about Hulk Hogan, more specifically because he's clearly showed that he's a member of the Republican Party, let's talk about the Republican Party. Let's talk about the evolution of the Republican Party from Lincoln to what it is right now in its current state. what it is right now. I don't even know if I say incarnation or whatever the hell it is, because I don't know if Republicans know what that party is. It's very, very fragmented. But we're going to go to the evolution of it. And why did I decide to attack this particular topic? So often I hear Republicans, the Donald Trumps, the Marjorie Taylor Greens, the Lauren Boeberts, uh, more of the radical right. Lindsey Graham is now considered one right. The Ted Cruzes, as we are the party of Lincoln. Of course, we're for minorities because we're the party of Lincoln who freed the slaves. The only problem is, if you understand history, you know that there is no comparison between the Republican Party under Lincoln and what we currently have now. They are actually polar opposites. And a lot of people out there that consider themselves Republican who hold on to Lincoln, it's only in name. It's not in any of the policies, it's not in any of the beliefs. And so I decided to put my teaching cap on because a lot of people out there know I went to school to be an educator. I was going to be an educator until I walked into the classroom and realized that I was too young and too immature to actually teach children. I am perhaps old enough now because I'm middle aged, but still too immature to teach children. But I have just enough condescension to teach adults if you want to learn. And a lot of people are going to be upset with what I say. This is all fact. This is not my opinion. I am going to interject some of my opinions or give further details of what the real situation of a particular situation was, what was really going down, what was really happening in the streets, right? I am going to give a little bit of my opinion because at the heart of me, I try to be a journalist, but I'm a commentator. That's what I am, is I'm a commentator, not strictly a journalist. A journalist just gives you the raw, real facts. I'm going to give you the raw, real facts with a little bit of Bruce, a little bit of Bruce talk. Okay. So I took copious notes because I wanted to get this right, and I'm teaching it. I'm doing this just as a lecture. Okay. So open up your ears, open up your minds. More importantly, open up your hearts to get all of this information that I'm about to give you, because it's vast. So let's start. The formation of the Republican Party was basically formatted or created due to the collapse of the Whig Party. There's a lot of people out there that don't understand that there were other political parties in the United States besides Democrat and Republicans. Yes, we're a two-party system now, but we didn't used to be. The Whigs were a political party. What was highlighted in the Republican Party, that was a northern party to start. This is important because now it's more of a southern party, but it was a northern party to start. And the main highlight of the party was the opposition to the expansion of slavery. That was their central tenet. They didn't want to expand slavery. Okay. Lincoln, a moderate Republican for the time, won the election. So Republicans opposed the expansion of slave states because they saw slavery as a moral wrong and a threat to free labor in the North. Now, I want you to really take notice of that. They said, yeah, slavery is morally wrong, but also, y'all know that we paying people up here in the North. Like, we can't have people just working for free. Like, we can't have that. It's going to mess up their economy. The South is going to have more economic wherewithal than we do. And this is key because they also fear that the expanding slavery would give Southern states more political power. So let's think about this. Is it really about the moral wrongness of slavery? Or is it an economic and political maneuver to make sure that they don't lose power, that the South doesn't gain too much power? Yeah, I mean, sure, it's morally wrong. I mean, we shouldn't treat human beings that way. But also, I'm talking in the voice of Republicans during this time. But also, they're about to get a lot of power if we have more slave states than free states. And economically, once you buy the slave, yeah, you got to feed them and kind of house them, kind of. But that's just free labor. which means economically the South is going to grow much faster than the North because we got to pay folks out here. So, why did all of a sudden in 1854 did this become a big deal? The issue was intensified after the Kansas-Nebraska Act of 1854, which allowed new territories to choose whether to permit slavery because they did not want any more slave states because economic political power. The Republican Party was formed in response to all of this, right? In 1854. So it was a collapse of the Whig Party and the response of the Kansas-Nebraska Act that was going to allow new states being formed to choose if they want to be slave states or free states, and uprisings led to the Republican Party and various anti-slavery groups joining together. In the 1860 election, Abraham Lincoln, who opposed slavery expansion, listen to what I just said. He opposed slavery expansion. That's key, all right? He opposed slavery expansion, was elected without support from any of the Southern states. So the Republicans are already saying, when we band together, we got enough political powers to keep the Southern states in line and end this expansion of slavery states. Because if slave states expand, not only are we going to lose political power, but we're going to lose economic power. But not to say that it's all about power, because they did feel like slavery was morally wrong. So I want to say that off top. And Lincoln was opposed to any slavery expansion. That's what he was opposed to. His election, Abraham Lincoln, is what led to the Southern secession and eventually the Civil War. So the South said, we're not going to be a part of this. Everybody knows what happened in the Civil War. North was getting their butt kicked for a long while. There was Lincoln, who actually wanted to pull out of the Civil War. And he just wanted to be like, hey, we can go back to the way things absolutely were. Y'all can have y'all slave states. We can have our free states. We'll negotiate what we do as far as this expansion, but we got to stop this infighting. That didn't go down. Civil War continued. North eventually prevailed, okay? And part of that was freeing all the slaves. That was strategic, though. After the Civil War, Republicans focused on securing rights for Black Americans and passing the Civil Rights Act of 1866 to grant citizenship and to challenge Southern Black codes. The Republicans led these efforts, pushing for federal enforcement of equal rights. That's a pretty good thing, right? Like after you win the war, you recognize, look, we can't just say Black people are free and they have rights. We got to enforce these rights. So we're going to go down into these Southern states and make sure that these Southerners are respecting the laws to which we passed. And what laws? They passed two amendments, the 14th and 15th Amendment. One of them securing the rights for Black men. Notice what I said there, Black men. It wasn't Black women, just Black men. To be able to vote, and it also granted them citizenship. This resulted in a significant Black political participation during the Reconstruction. Go back and look at Black people in Congress, in state assemblies during Reconstruction. There are a lot of Black people that were gaining political power in the South because Black people could vote. Well, Black men can vote. This that whole misogyny thing that we still got to deal with America. But at least, Black men could do something, right? I mean, that's good, right? Right? That's sarcasm, ladies and gentlemen. That's not good. Oh, by the way, white women still ain't have no rights at this time either, but Black men did. Anyway, there was a shift in the party's focus. By the 1870s, the GOP, the Republicans, began aligning with wealthy industrialists, making a priority for economic interests over Southern racial reform. So the 70s, So the Republican Party was formed 1854. Within 20 years, after they didn't win the Civil War, they didn't give black people the right to vote and made them citizens. They're like, look, we need to be about getting this money. Because let's remember, they didn't want the expansion of slave states because they were going to lose economic power with the South. Now, these rich industrialists in the North, these rich industrialist Republicans in the North are saying, hey, man, why are we wasting all this time on these black rights? We need to be getting this bag. We need to be getting this money. And so that they did. What they did is the party gradually abandoned its commitment to racial reform, culminating in the Compromise of 1877 under the President Rutherford B. Hayes, who was a Republican, which ended Reconstruction and left Black Americans vulnerable to Jim Crow laws and disenfranchisement as the GOP focused on industrial growth. So the North used or allowed Black soldiers to participate. There's a whole movie about it called Glory. Black soldiers to participate in the Civil War. So they used Black help, and they passed some amendments, right, to give Black men the right to vote and the right to be citizens. But when it started, the efforts, because remember, there was federal government sent people to the South to enforce the new amendments and laws giving Black people freedoms. So it was a real expense financially and with time. And they realized, we not getting to the bag focusing on these Black rights. Let's just back away. Let's let the South handle it. You know what I'm saying? It's been a few years. The South probably got the message. We're going to let the South handle it, and we're going to back away and go get this bag. These were Northern Republicans that was doing this. They were about big business at this point. That led to Jim Crow, which I love to point out every time that you guys are listening or watching me. I have tattoos on my arms on my parents' birth dates. They were born in 57 and 58. At the height of Jim Crow, my mother used to go and visit my grandfather's family in South Carolina. She saw white only signs. I'm only a generation removed from that. I'm their child. It wasn't that long ago is the point I'm trying to make. So as time goes on, you see the transformation of the Republican Party to the party of big business, especially during the 1920s. During the economic boom of the 1920s, the Republican Party increasingly aligned itself with big business and industrial interests. The GOP embraced policies that favored laissez-faire economics, minimal government intervention, and low taxes, which were seen as essential for promoting business growth and prosperities. Presidents like Warren G. Harding and Calvin Coolidge and Herbert Hoover, they pushed for this shift and advocated for policies that benefit large corporations and the wealthy. Under their leadership, the GOP championed deregulations, turf protections, and policies that facilitated corporate mergers and expansion. So now we're starting to see in the 1920s how the Republican Party is starting to look more like the Republican Party now. What is all this? Business, low taxes, right? It all sounds good, right? Promote businesses, give people low taxes, low government interference, let people do their thing. What could possibly go wrong? What would be the byproduct of something like this? During this period, saw significant economic growth. It did. They grew that money, but it also led to a greater economic inequality. It set the stage for the eventual collapse of the stock market in 1929, which triggered the Great Depression. The Republican Party closed ties to business interests during this era, solidified its reputation as the party of big business, a label that would influence its identities for decades to come, including today. So, as I was saying, and as I would point out, what could go wrong? Well, we just saw what went wrong. Republicans are what led to the Great Depression. It's what led to a greater pay disparity, a greater wage gap, a greater wealth gap. The rich got richer, the poor got poorer. Are we seeing something that's similar? So not only did they abandon their efforts to help Black people, they became all about that dollar bill. Now it's starting to look like the Republican Party we know, not the party that fought against the expansion of slavery, fought against the expansion of slavery. They didn't really fight to end slavery. Ending slavery was a byproduct of the Civil War. But they did believe that slavery was morally wrong, so I will give Lincoln that. But this whole thing that he freed the slaves, come on now. The Civil War is what freed the slaves. It had to happen. They couldn't go back to, hey, let's just go back to y'all have your free states, we have our slave states. You couldn't go back to that, okay? All right. Now, you say to me, well, Bruce, all right, they're about big business. That's still a good thing. They deserted Black people. Okay. But how did they get to a point where they don't want to feed kids lunch? Because the Republican Party is all about taking care of the kids, right? That's what the whole anti-abortion thing. They're about taking care of the kids. How did they get to a point where they don't want to feed kids as they do today? Well, it started with the opposition to the New Deal policies. Let me explain. In the 1930s, the Republican Party became the primary opposition to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal. You know, the president that brought us out of the Great Depression and the one who championed us during World War II, the people that were so-called part of the greatest generation. Yeah, them. Their opposition to President Roosevelt's New Deal, which aimed to combat the Great Depression through extensive government intervention in the economy. Republicans argued that the New Deal expansive programs and regulations overstepped federal authority, shifted free enterprise, and threatened individual liberties. Threatened individual liberties to pull people out of the Great Depression by expanding the government to help the needy and the poor. That's taking liberties away from them? Or is it they're not able to line their pockets full of money like they were doing, which led to the Great Depression in the first place? That's my personal aside. Let me get back to the facts and the notes. They believed, Republicans during this time, during the 1930s, the best path to economic recovery was through reduced government spending, lower taxes, and allowing the free market to correct itself. So the same thing that caused the Great Depression was going to be the same thing that fixed the Great Depression? Well, a broke clock is right twice. I don't know. I guess if you turn around, you do end up in the same place if you do a 360. I don't know what any of that means. I'm confused. Okay, never mind. Let's get to the next thing. The opposition to the New Deal was pivotal in shaping the GOP's modern identity as a party of limited government, fiscal conservatism, and free market principles. The Republican resistance to the New Deal led the groundwork for the party's later advocacy for smaller government, reduced regulation, and lower taxes, which became central tenets of the GOP, especially in the later half of the 20th century and the 21st century. These are still the tenets of the GOP. They believe in limited government and lower taxes for the rich, limited government when it applies to them, expansive government when it applies to anything that they don't agree with. Since it sounds a little hypocritical, once again, I interjected my own personal opinion to this. I know y'all are watching and listening to get the unsolicited perspective. Let me get back to the facts. Now, what I still haven't explained is how the Republicans who started in the North now dominate the South. This is how that happened. The Democratic Party's support for civil rights, particularly during the 1960s, marked a significant shift in American politics. This is what a lot of people that say that they're Republican and the party of Lincoln fail to address. In the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a watershed moment aiming to end segregation in public places and ban employment discriminations on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. President Lyndon Baines Johnson, my favorite president and also a Democrat, championed the act despite considerable opposition from within its party, particularly from Southern Democrats known as Dixiecrats. This support for civil rights by the Democratic Party was a turning point that began to shift the party's base. Okay, so I know some people are confused. Like, how the hell was a Democrat from the South, who originally the Democrats opposed ending slavery, right? That's what they love to say. That's what Republicans love to say now is during slavery times, the Democrats wanted to maintain slavery, and it was the Republicans that wanted to end slavery. They're true, but only in name only. The actual parties have done a dramatic shift, and it starts in the 60s with, to me, the greatest president of all time, Lyndon Baines Johnson, which they had to do the same thing that they had to do 100 years later, right? They had to give Black people, through the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, their rights back that they gave after the Civil War. Why? Because Republicans deserted Black Southerners to get the bag, to get that money. What became important to Northern Republicans was expanding their economic base, them specifically, the wealthy ones. Okay, what did Republicans do during the Democrats' push for civil rights? Because the party shift, right? It used to be Republicans pushing for civil rights in 1860s. Now in the 1960s, it's Democrats pushing for civil rights. So what was the Republican response to all this? The Republican Party, historically, the party of Lincoln and civil rights, saw its shift in its stance during this period. This is when the shift happens. Prominent Republican figures like Senator Barry Goldwater opposed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. He tried to argue that it infringed on states' rights and individual freedoms. The states' rights was to make sure Black people were segregated and didn't have the right to vote. And individual freedoms were the individual freedoms to hate and be bigots. Now, once again, I interjected my personal comments into the facts, but as I'm explaining it to you, taking my personal comments out, you see where I'm going, right? You see how I get there. Logically, that makes plenty of sense. That, of course, Republicans would say it's under states' rights and individual freedoms because they want the states to be able to segregate Black people. They want the individual freedoms to hate. Remember, there's lynchings going on at this time, right? You can see pictures. Once again, this is during my parents' lifetime. The generation above me, their lifetime. There are pictures out there where they were lynching Black people. Little kids was out there. It was like a big barbecue. It was a big party to watch a person being hung. Think about the barbaric nature of that. And the Democrats are saying, yo, y'all wilding out. Black people need to have their rights protected. And we're going to make sure that the 14th and 15th Amendments are being enforced by this Civil Rights Act and this Voting Rights Act. And Republicans are like, nah, man, you're taking away our state rights and our individual freedom. Led by Senator Barry Goldwater. Goldwater's opposition was not based on support for segregation, but rather on a strict Constitution interpretation and belief in limited federal government. That is BS. That's a line from a school textbook from the South. No, Barry Goldwater was opposed to Black people having freedoms. He was opposed to segregation ending. And this is the reason why it's so very, very important for history books to be correct and to be in libraries. and not this critical race theory that everybody thinks that they're teaching kids. No, they're just teaching kids the real history of America. So you can sugarcoat it all you want to, but I read that line and I'm telling you for emphasis that history books in the South are written completely different than history books in the North, because history books in the South were rewritten by the daughters of the Confederacy. They've evolved over time. You might know them now as those Liberty Moms. Same organization, different name. But okay, what happened with Black voters? Because Black voters used to vote Republican. Why? Because Lincoln and the Republicans freed the slaves, sort of. They fought for Black rights until, right? So Black people were Republican and voted Republican because Republicans were the party of Lincoln. Now we got Lyndon Baines Johnson, a Southern Democrat, Texas Democrat, and John Kennedy before him fighting for Black people. So what happened? As the Democratic Party increasingly embraced civil rights, Black voters who had traditionally supported Republican since Reconstruction began to shift their allegiance to Democrats. This realignment was further solidified by the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which dismantled legal barriers from Black disenfranchisement. By the late 1960s, the majority of Black voters had moved to the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party was about that civil rights and social justice. Okay. What did the GOP do? So there was a movement of white Southern voters to the GOP. I mean, naturally, that would be the case, right? The GOP began to attract white Southern voters who felt alienated by the Democratic Party civil rights agenda. Now, remember, at this time, Republicans are in the North, Democrats are in the South. Democrats dominate the South, Republicans dominate the North. Okay? 1960s, you see this shift. You see a lot of white Southerners pissed off about the civil rights movement. If you don't believe me, go take Google. It's not really that hard to do, and look up pictures of integration of schools. Watch the large crowds of grown ass white adults yelling at little Black school children. Little. There are some high school ones as well, which is not okay, but the little ones. The Republican Party, that's right, they love the kids, right? So what happened was is that white Southerners was like, yo, the hell with this civil rights stuff. I'm going Republican. Why? Because Republicans were opposed to the civil rights movement in the 1960s. See that shift? See that shift? The Republican Party was going to appeal specifically to these white voters over the concern of civil rights and state rights and federal intervention. Like the federal government can't tell you how to live your life. That's was the basis that they maintained their bigotry. The federal government shouldn't tell you how to live your life. The federal government wasn't telling them how to live your life. Federal government was just saying, hey, you can't restrict these people from living their lives. What this meant is that the South saw a switch from a Democratic stronghold to a Republican stronghold. Such prominent Democrats like Strom Thurmond, who was a governor, senator of South Carolina. He was in the Senate and Congress for like all his life, like 80 years. During this time, had been a Democrat, switched parties, became a Republican. This was what was happening then. So much like John McCain's son announced the other day that he switched from the Republican Party to the Democrat Party because this party isn't a party that he recognizes anymore. Southern whites switched from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, and Blacks switched from the Republican Party to the Democratic Party. That's why you see so many Black people supporting the Democratic candidate. And you still got some Black people supporting the Republican candidate, but Okay. This realignment of the South transformed into a Republican stronghold, a process that gained significant momentum in the 1980s when Ronald Reagan ran for president. Reagan's promoting of conservative values emphasized limited government, free market economics, and a strong national defense resonated with a deeply white Southerners. Reagan also appealed to social conservatives, including evangelical Christians who became a powerful force within the GOP. So that's the reason why you didn't just see a growth and expansion of the GOP solely in the South. You see it also in the Midwestern states and flyover states because of evangelical Christians. It's also important to note that when Reagan announced that he was running for president, one of the first stop places was at the birthplace of where the three young civil rights workers got killed in Mississippi. There was meaning behind him going there and telling them that he's going to fight for state rights, because state rights at that point became, we could tell people what they can and cannot do. That's what states' right meant at that particular time. I'm going to fast forward because Herbert Walker was more of a moderate Republican. If you actually go look at his record, he was for immigration, right? He was for Latino people. He didn't have this bigotry that Reagan disguised, but was clearly there, and that we kind of see now under certain members, a majority, unfortunately, of the Republican Party now. I want to get to Obama's election and Mitt Romney's loss, because that's where you see the rise of the Tea Party. And you see an emphasis on the anger of the white voter. So Mitt Romney's loss to Barack Obama in 2012 exposed divisions within the Republican Party. The defeat led to an autopsy report recommending broader outreach to minorities and women. However, internal conflicts arose between established Republicans advocating for inclusivity and conservative factions resistant to changing core principles. So listen to that. After Mitt Romney lost the election, they said, hey, look, man, we need to do a better job of outreaching to minority voters and women. Because, see, here's the thing. Some of the conservative values that the Republican Party has, a lot of Black Americans also have as well. Blacks, by and large, are very conservative. But historically, since 1960, the Republican Party has done everything in its power to enact laws and policies that restrict the rights of minorities and women. So even though you might be a conservative minority, you're not going to vote for Republicans because you're still a minority and their policies are against you. The Republican Party saw that in 2012 after Mitt Romney lost. And they said, hey, man, we need to kind of broaden our approach. We could still be like limited government, and we can still kind of be for big business, but also we've got to kind of end this wealth gap. And we kind of need to help the people that are struggling the most. But there were some people in that party that just said, the hell with that. We like things the way they are. So what ended up happening? Donald Trump capitalized on all this. So Donald Trump's campaign capitalized on white working class voters disconnected with the GOP establishment. His hardline stance on immigration, including promises to build the border wall and ban certain immigrants, not all immigrants, just certain immigrants, immigrants of color, resonated with many of the voters, white voters, once again, white working class voters, that set him apart from the other candidates. Trump's outside persona and populist rhetoric appealed to frustrated Republicans, white Republicans, leading to a surprising primary victory and eventual presidency. Under Trump, the GOP shift towards a populist, nationalist agenda, focusing on issues like immigration and trade protectionism. Traditional conservative values took a backseat to Trump's policy, changing the party around and basically shaping its identity. Then there are still for low taxes on the wealthy, for big business, even though anytime the businesses aren't regulated, you get housing crashes, Great Depression, uh, increased wage gap. Look, what just happened during the pandemic, where the rich and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk grew their wealth while the poor got poorer. That lets you know that the economic policies of the Republican Party do not benefit the average working American. They benefit the not average, sort of working, rich American. I mean, they're working. I guess rich people work too. I mean, trading and all that stuff. Private equity companies, they do those mergers and takeover companies. And, I mean, I guess that's work too. It's just not the type of work that I would want to do. So this is everything to answer your question about the transformation of the Republican Party from Lincoln to Trump. It's a vastly different party. It's not the same. So from here on out, all you Republicans out there that say that you're party of Lincoln, no, you're not. You're the party of Barry Goldwater. You're the party of Donald Trump. There's nothing noble about anything that you stand for, because what you stand for is taken away from other people. It's if you just said, these are my values, this is what I believe in. Cool. You believe in what you want to believe in. I'll believe in what I want to believe in. I'm going to live in my house. You're going to live in your house. My values don't concern you. Your values don't concern me. What we really need to get down is how we're going to tax people and what we should do about regulation and trade. Because businesses do need to be regulated. And we do need to have an official stance on trade. And we do need to improve our immigration policies. Cool. But don't tell me how I need to live my life, because I'm not telling you how to live yours. Republicans believe in a limited government. Limited to them. Expansive to anybody who's not them. And that is the difference between the Republican Party under Abraham Lincoln and what it currently is under Donald Trump. All right, I'm going to end today's episode by talking about the thing that I don't like really about me. I like me as a person. I think I'm a decent person. I try to be a good person, but there are aspects of my personality that I don't like, and one of them is my vanity. I am vain. Let me give you an example. So like I said, I was at my sister's 40th birthday party, and I got my little cousins with me. Now, it makes me so happy that my little cousins, who are 10, 15 years younger than me, want to hang out with me, because I can remember being their age in my late 20s, early 30s, and I didn't want to hang out with anybody in their 40s. Not like hang out. Maybe go visit for a little while, but not hang out. They are like, hey, let's go out and let's go do something together, which is cool, right? It amazes me, because that wasn't me at that age. But also, I'm very childlike, and maybe I don't act my age. So maybe they see me more as a peer than an adult, as an elder. Okay, cool. And I take chances in life with fashion and other things. I wear dangling earrings. That's my style. Like, I try to keep up with the latest fashion trends that fit me at my big age. So at the party, I wore these shorts, and these shorts fit very differently than they did 2 years ago, because I'm 20 pounds heavier than I was 2 years ago. Don't worry about me. I'm going to get the weight off by the end of the year. But anyway, not all the weight, 15 pounds. That's another part of my vanity, my weight. But anyway, so I put on these shorts, and I'm like, do I still really fit these shorts? Are these shorts too tight? So the first thing I do is I ask my cousin, my male cousin that lives right up the road from me. He's 30 years old. We hang out a couple times a year, go out partying. It's a fun time. That's my man. And I say, hey, cuz, not like I'm a crip, but I say, hey, cuz, are these shorts too tight? He was like, nah, you straight. Nah, you got it. And I was like, hey, don't BS me, man. Like, seriously, do I need to change my shorts or can I, is this okay? Do I look foolish? No, you look good. All right, cool. But that wasn't good enough for my vanity. So I asked my goddaughter, hey, baby girl, because that's my nickname for her. Hey, baby girl, what do you think about these shorts? Are they too tight? Because the first thing that she said to me was, that fit, I'm feeling that fit. I was like, okay, cool. But what about these shorts? Are they too tight? She was like, nah, they're not too tight. If they was one size smaller, then they would be too tight, but they are just right. And then I asked one more cousin just to verify, are these shorts cool? And she was like, they cool. So I was like, all right, bet. I can't gain no more weight. I need to lose the weight to make sure that I can still rock these shorts. And my sister, being the jokester that she is, said, oh, you got your hoochie daddy shorts on. I see you showing some knees. I'm like, look, nobody wears shorts below their knees anymore. Yes, but they're not hoochie daddy. These aren't 5-inch inseam shorts. Like, they're long enough. Like, I'm all right. It's like, yeah, no, you got your hoochie daddy shorts. They look good, but you got some hoochie daddy shorts on. I was like, you old, you 40, you don't know what's hip. That's what I said. One thing that kind of bothered me at this trip and other times that I've gone out is I have this body butter that I spent more than a little bit of change on. And it's kind of like a cologne body butter. And for those people that don't know the difference between lotion and body butter is not, it's less of a, it's not as liquidy. That's not a word, but you know what I mean. And it's more absorbent to your skin. It gives you a nice little shine and glow. And for people that has melanin, it's really good for their skin. So I love using body butters. One of my friends hit me up to this body butter by Vaseline. Yeah, by Vaseline. It's got a little hint of coconut. I like it. Right? I like the smell. I like to smell good. That's the point I'm trying to get at. So I bought this special cologne body butter because it's supposed to make your skin glow and make you smell good. Not only that, I got my colognes on. Not colognes. It's one cologne, but I brought like 3 different colognes so I could decide which smell I wanted to have because I have a cologne collection because I like to smell good, part of my vanity. And it bothered me because not one person at this party said I smelled good. And then nobody say I stank. But I was hoping, when I gave people daps or hugs, they'd be like, oh, you smell good. I didn't get one. Not one. I haven't brought this up to my sister yet. So the next sibling happy hour, we're definitely going to bring this up. But not one person commented on my scent. And that is bothering me because I spent a lot of money on this body butter and nobody commented on it. Oh, that's my vanity. My vanity is the way I look. And I know some of y'all people that watch this episode be like, damn, Bruce, like the way you look, sometimes you be looking rough on these shows. Yeah, I should take more effort and looking more clean when I'm filming these episodes, but I got to film these episodes when I can. And I'm not going to go through a whole process of pampering myself to get ready to jump on this camera because I'm preparing myself with the outline and the rundown to make sure that I give y'all good information, like I did when I broke down how the Republican Party has evolved from Lincoln to Trump. Now, did I interject my personal comments in that? Yes, I did, because this is Unsolicited with Bruce Anthony. I'm gonna give you my unsolicited perspective, but I also gave you facts and the history of it. And this is, if you don't believe me, just it doesn't take much to Google, go to the library, read some history books. It's pretty evident, what side Republicans and Democrats were on during the first civil rights movement in the 1860s and then the next civil rights movement in the 1960s. And I wonder if we're going to have another civil rights movement in the 2060s. We might, but my go back to my vanity. Yeah, man, spend a lot of money on smelling good, looking good. Then nobody comment, not one. My goddaughter said my fit looked good. And, I take chances with fashion. Um, Fashion Nova was my friend. I don't like too much of what they're coming out with now. It's a little bit too young for me. I like to go to the mall to do some shopping. It's really tough to find things that fit my frame. Um, so I can't rock that stuff. And now these young kids are coming back out with baggy clothes, and I work out too hard to hide everything that I'm trying to show people. One of the reasons why my shorts were, snug, not tight, snug, is because I work out. I want people to see, hey, this is what I'm doing it for. Do I love the fall? Yes. Do I hate the winter? Yes, because in the fall I can still kind of show off my body, but in the winter I cannot. This is my vanity. Y'all are learning more and more about Bruce Anthony each show that passes because I'm going to let y'all in. I'm going to let y'all in. I got some vanity. And I'm pissed off that nobody told me that I smell good. And this wasn't the first time. I was out a couple of weeks ago with my goddaughter and my bestie, and nobody told me that I smell good. They're not telling me that I stink, which is also, really important. They're not telling me that I smell good. So what's all the effort for? What's all the work for? That's all I'm saying. If I'm not gonna get patted on the shoulder and get remarks of, you smell good. You look good, Bruce. That's what I want. Got childhood trauma. Anyway, on that note, as I've embarrassed myself on this show by telling you my heartache from Hulk Hogan, you heard my disgust at the Republican Party, and now you're disgusted at my vanity. But that's just unsolicited with Bruce Anthony, right? That's just who I am. But I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank everybody for listening. And until next time, as always, I'll holler. Whew, that was a hell of a show. Thank you for rocking with us here on Unsolicited Perspectives with Bruce Anthony. Now, before you go, don't forget to follow, subscribe, like, comment, and share our podcast wherever you're listening or watching it to it. Pass it along to your friends. If you enjoy it, that means the people that you rock will enjoy it also. So share the wealth, share the knowledge, share the noise. And for all those people that say, well, I don't have a YouTube. If you have a Gmail account, you have a YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can actually watch our video podcast. But the real party is on our Patreon page, After Hours Uncensored and Talking Straight-ish. After Hours Uncensored is another show with my sister. And once again, the key word there is uncensored. Those are exclusively on our Patreon page. Jump onto our website at unsolicitedperspectives.com for all things us. That's where you can get all of our audio, video, our blogs, and even buy our merch. And if you're really feeling genuine and want to help us out, you can donate on our donations page. Donations go strictly to improving our software and hardware so we can keep giving you guys good content that you can clearly listen to and that you can clearly see. So any donation would be appreciative. Most importantly, I want to say thank you for listening and watching and supporting us. And I'll catch you next time. Audi 5000. Peace. Freedom over fame. The cycle stays the same.